by the Mission Forward team. I'm Jill Michelson, and we're dealing with a couple of technology issues that we're just calmly working through. But I'd like to welcome you all here. I'm one of a number of people on our Mission Forward team working on helping our congregation work through a very deliberate process as we begin the search for a new pastor. And part of our process is evaluating and identifying the nature of our congregation, our core characteristics, and also understanding our place in our community. And as part of the process of understanding our place in our community, we have done a few things that I know you're aware of. First of all, we did a walking tour of the community, just went around and looked around the community with our eyes and our ears open, actually with our noses open, using every sense. So a group of us went through and just took a look at what kind of residences do we have, what kind of businesses do we have, what kind of level of activity do we have, focusing on our immediate community. But our place in the community is more than just our place in in this space. We're also a member of a community that has a society, a number of societies as part of it. We're also a member of a community at a point in time. And if you've seen our church timeline, you'll see how we've integrated different major achievements and stages of our church with different stages of society and the local area and the nation at large. So it's more than just a place. We're at a point in a place and a time. And today we've invited some speakers here today to talk about our community, the city of Rochester, where we're at right now, where we foresee ourselves going in the future. And so that's the point of our forum that we have today. So I'll just give you a brief overview of what we'll be doing. So we have several speakers with us today. We'll do some introductions. The speakers will have each about 5 minutes to talk about their chosen area of interest in the community of Rochester. And then we'll open it up to questions from the audience. And I think we're all familiar enough with each other. We can just kind of shout out questions. Raise your hand maybe, and I'll just point to you. You can shout your question out, and then our speakers will address it, either individually or, in turn as appropriate. And I think that should chew up enough of our time, make it worth your while, I hope. So with that, I'll turn it over to Randy for a brief prayer.
This morning I'm going to be reading a blessing that was written by John O'Donohue in the book To Bless the Space Between Us. It's a blessing for a new beginning. In out-of-the-way places of the heart, where your thoughts never think to wander, this beginning has been quietly forming, waiting until you are ready to emerge. For a long time, it has watched your desire, feeling the emptiness growing inside you, noticing how you willed yourself on, still unable to leave what you had outgrown. It watched you play with the seduction of safety and the great promises that sameness whispered, heard the waves of turmoil rise and relent, wondered, would you always live like this? Then the delight, when your courage kindled, and out you stepped onto new ground, your eyes young again with energy and dream, a path of plenitude opening before you. Though your destination is not yet clear, you can trust the promise of this opening. Unfurl yourself into the grace of beginning that is at one with your life's desire. Awaken your spirit to adventure. Holding nothing back, learn to find ease in new risk. Soon you will be home in a new rhythm, for your soul senses the world that awaits you.
All right, well, our speakers would like to come up and take their assigned positions. It's not a firing line, guys. They're going pretty nice over here. I think it's just the two of you. If you want to just take the podium and introduce yourself, and then we'll introduce your speaker. Sure. You want to flip a coin? See who goes first. To me? Okay.
to be here today. My name is Savita Kataria, and I am from Diversity Council. Rochester native for almost 21 years. I came from originally, I asked this question in one of my, when I'm presenting, where am I from? Where are you from? And a lot of people guess. And if I may ask, where am I from? Can you guess? Take a guess.
India.
I'm sorry?
India?
Yes, I am from India. And if I have asked this question 10 years ago, I would not have gotten this answer. I was from all over the world. So, thank you. And that is because of the awareness that has increased over time. So we are in that change of time that I'm here, and I'm so thankful for all the work I'm doing through Diversity Council. I manage a program called Becoming the Solution, which is a diversity and inclusion training program. That's my focus. My background, I don't know how I am doing what I'm doing because I did accounting and human resource management. So. But my path where I am today is because of the prayer that was sent this morning, what Randy said. I could not agree more to that. I don't know which path we will be on, who is carving it. All I know is I'm just there for some reason. So thank you so much for inviting me, and I'm so thrilled to be here. And I will introduce my program later, right, Joe?
You can move on.
Oh, I can, okay. So Diversity Council is an organization 25 years plus here. I was here for several programs. One was Migrant Health Program and Isaiah when the session was happening. So this church is very familiar to me because I was involved in those two programs also. Do you have a figure? Okay. Okay. So this is our mission and vision. So our foundation is education for building a healthy, inclusive, and prosperous community. And vision is a community in which every individual is respected. So we emphasize on every and all. Some of the goals, we address all areas from global to youth to adult to community engagement. So my role specific is with adult education, and we have a program manager for youth, and community engagement it's everybody's role. So that's what I'm here for. Biggest thing is, this is our focus that is directed by our board of directors, which direction our program will go to. So when we talk about adults, this is what we talk about. Awareness of biases, knowledge of how stereotyping occurs, and what can you do? Skills to challenge. And then we have, this is our ultimate goal, courageous leaders and role models. But as a community, we really want to have equal access to leadership, expertise, and resources. So going back to why I am doing this, what I'm doing, I studied in India in a parochial school. So I'm very familiar with, learning about Bible. We did that. We did also a lot of things. I was we used to have assembly in the morning. So when I was entering this morning, that feeling came back of my childhood growing up, actually. But like, wow, I've forgotten that, but I'm so thrilled to be here today. Oops. Okay. I'm just going to bring all of it up. So for us, youth education program is a SPARK. It's called SPARK. It goes through each and every school. Each kid goes through this program in the school district, Rochester School District, and we also do neighboring communities. There's as of today, average students, 14,000 students go through the program of the youth program, and we do 500 plus workshops a year, and there are 30 plus community facilitators who are volunteer and also are part of our facilitation team. And then just 2 years ago, we started for bullying prevention, student leaders creating change. And these are the students who are from high school, who are the leaders in making that change happen in their own school. For my program, this is what it is. We started 2011. I work with everybody, K-12, higher ed, government, nonprofit, for-profit, and faith organizations, everybody. And we have trained close to 2,000 people since 2011. And many, many modules to pick from. So this is what I do in a brief. For a community engagement, we engage the community in many ways. Leadership, expertise, and resources. So for leadership, we take the responsibility, DC staff. It could be any of us, our executive director, myself, or our youth program manager. Believe it or not, we are only 4 people in a staff. But it seems like we do a lot, but this is how, right, I look at the church brochure and I'm like, my goodness, how much work is getting done. So it doesn't matter how small or big we are, how much we do is. So this is what we do. We work with Racial Equity Network, convener for that. There is a team called Bias Hate Crime Incident Team that works with the police force, and Community Inclusion Action team that is working to make sure there are community members from diverse background who are empowered to be part of board members. So that's the team that's coming up with the leadership training in January onwards. Expertise, many ways, we provide knowledge and expertise resources. I tried to print a list of it was too long, so these are some highlights of how we are, and I'm so proud of being a part of this organization and to be here today. If you want more, you can go to the Diversity Council website. And that's it. But I have a question for you. When I came here, I said, why we do what we do? And this is my question to you is, when we explore further, what is an inclusive community and what does it mean to you? So we'll go further with that, but thank you so much. And I look forward to your questions, and I will try my best to answer as much as I know based on my knowledge.
Morning. Morning. My name is Jeff Ellerbush. I work for the Rochester Homestead Planning Department. We're a city-county governmental agency. I've worked for them since 1977. So I don't know if the church was, not much of the church was here in 1977. Got it down to, and I live just 3 or 4 blocks away over by the other Lutheran Church. The points made by the previous speaker about, I'm going to talk to you basically, kind of touch on demographic issues and some of the major shifts that have happened in the community over the last few years. But the diversity of our community has changed dramatically. 56% of the growth in population in the last 10 years have been in populations of minority populations. So that's most activity going on. And it will continue that way into the future. So we're becoming a more diverse community, and with that become the issues of the Diversity Council gets involved with. I want to talk to some, I thought I only had 3 minutes, so I have more time, a little bit more time, but I think the biggest issue facing Rochester, it's facing everywhere in the United States. It's facing everywhere in Minnesota. It's what's been described as the new normal. And when I look around the room, people will understand what it is. It's the aging of the baby boom. It's never happened in the history of the world. It's never happened in the history of our country, where a population pyramid is what everybody talks about. On the top are the really old people, on the bottom, the really wide bottom, are the young people. Our population pyramid doesn't look anything like that. It looks like Santa Claus with a bag on his back. Tiny little head of the old people, great big sack full of baby boomers, and the kids on the legs at the bottom. The kids have to support that big body on top of them, and there aren't as many as there used to be, right? So we're becoming a population that's growing towards more dependency in the youth, and the elderly or senior populations are becoming over 50%, and the rest of the half of the population is responsible to support that group. So that's a big change. Used to have a whole bunch, used to be like 1/5, 1/5 for old and young, and 4/5 for the supporters. Now it's basically going to become close to half and half. And you don't see that. So our growth that we're projecting in the future in Rochester, I think the other thing was there was supposed to be someone here from the DMC. So I'll steal a little DMC story. The DMC initiative that's in Rochester, and you hear about so much in the newspaper, is an economic development program. It's not a growth program. It's really a program to maintain the stability and importance of the health industry in Rochester, because as I mentioned, how people are getting older and more people are going to need health care, and you need more people to do that kind of work. And so the growth of Mayo Clinic in Rochester was determined by their leadership to remain in Rochester and not go somewhere else. So that's really the big issue that I always bring forward to people. The DMC, more or less, is somewhat of a public promise that never had been made before, kind of by Mayo in a way, that they're going to stay here. They're going to keep Rochester as one of their major locations, and they're not going to leave here. So if they're not going to leave here, then our growth will continue as it has historically in the past. So that's what all our planning was always based on, was how well Mayo Clinic and the health industry has historically done in Rochester and in the area. So we were always planning on the growth. So it's not, the plans that we've taken over the years have always included the same kind of level of growth. The DMC does not add any more growth. It more or less promises that it really is going to happen, because we were guessing it was going to happen. Now we have a little bit more assurance in the program that it will happen. So we've had to make no big flip-flop changes, ideas, new concepts with our growth projections. They're the same as we've always had. But as I mentioned, the big deal is the aging of the baby boom, which is a change in the population. Most of the people that moved to Rochester historically over the last 10 years have been immigration from outside of the United States, international immigration. It's like 97% of the people that have moved here from the net number of people that have moved here have come from international locations. Domestic population growth is like 3%. That means a lot of people, like elderly people or people who retired, leave, and young people come in. So it's almost a 50-50 thing, and we grow by a very little amount with domestic population historically, just recently. And that's going to continue, but it's fallen off recently. International migration dropped the last couple of years. So it's not occurring as fast as it used to, but it still will continue to occur and be one of our biggest changes. When it comes into what happens with the baby boom aging, is that we get different types of demand for household types in the community. We're not a community of husband, wife, and kids in school. We will be becoming, and we are becoming more and more a community of people living alone, people 65 years of age living alone, and married people without children. They're basically half of the population are those kinds of families. And we used to be dominated by the family with children. And we're not going to be anymore for the next 20 or 30 years. It's going to change. So that makes all the kinds of things that we do a little bit more different, from providing any kind of social services to providing access through transportation. Bigger deal, much bigger deal when we have more households that need that kind of thing. And so that's the big change. The DMC proposal, if there's an issue with DMC from a planning perspective, it's what's been labeled the labor force gap. As I mentioned before, we plan basically the same amount of growth. I'll give you some numbers just to, I didn't want to scare you, but I'll give you numbers as to the population. The city of Rochester is expected to grow to 125,000 in the year 2020. So in about 6 more years. 148,000 in 2030 and 164,000 in 2040. Again, those are very similar growth rates. They're actually lower than the growth rate between 1990 and 2000. We aren't projecting to ever grow as fast as we did in that decade. That was a decade when even more and more houses, we were building 900 to 1,000 houses a year. That was in the period before the Mayo Clinic built the Gonda building. They were filling the place up. There was even housing programs called First Homes, because there weren't enough houses available for all the new employees that were coming into town. That kind of thing is anticipated to happen in the future as DMC expands and grows and builds more buildings that have to have more employees in. That labor force gap is the fact that we don't have enough domestic in-migration to fill the jobs. And that's what the DMC has to make Rochester look better for. Coming and living here to work and making this place attractive to the clients of the business of healthcare and to the employees who are supposed to take care of those folks. Because they're competing with everywhere else in the United States, which has this same problem because of the baby boom generation being so big and the group behind them not being as big. So everybody needs good labor and qualified labor, and that's the biggest issue. So we're going to try, what DMC is attempting to try through their program is to make Rochester attractive, to get more people to move here to take the jobs. We expect that what we did over the history is we took people who didn't work and made them workers. So when the big job needs were 20 years ago, 30 years ago, people who were stay-at-homes didn't stay at home anymore. Almost everybody worked. Farmers took 2 jobs. They farmed and had a job in town. We've really worked that group of population. We've got the amount of people who work at about as high as it's ever going to be. So that's why we have to rely on immigration or people coming from somewhere else to fill these jobs, because we've used all the folks that we have who already live here as much as we can. We can't get any more efficient with the people. So we're expecting growth in new visitors and new residents. And the other thing is that the jobs are shifting a little bit. We've lost a lot of high-paying jobs in the manufacturing sector. And we have IBM, the IBM facility, which is at just a portion of the employment that it had in the past. And it's a really big building, which could be a place to put a lot more employment back into in the future. So that would be a goal. That's a place to put these new facilities without having to add more to meet the demands. As I mentioned, the system got more efficient in getting workers, people out of their homes and out of their jobs and taking another job. What we got efficient at also is bringing commuters in to work here and live somewhere else. So what we've expected is that the commuter growth will increase by about 1/3 of what it has been historically. That's to fill these extra jobs. We're going to expect that people like me and people like you are going to continue working later into their careers because there will be a demand for it. Your employer will want you to do that because they can't find someone to fill your job, so you'll work later on in your life, but there's still going to be that group that we need brand new folks to fill. The businesses got more efficient and found more ways to get people into the workforce. The city and the county has to get more efficient because we have to get more efficient in the way we provide services, and that might require a change in pattern. As I mentioned, we're going to get much more emphasis on housing with people living alone versus families, so we got to build different type of housing, but we also have to find ways to use the housing that we have more efficiently for maybe a lot more. There'll be a lot less single-family homes and a lot more multi-family type housing because there's a lot more households that need that kind of housing. My takeaway or suggestion is what your community can do. The other thing I can touch on is youth and education. One of our biggest deals is educating the youth that we have that are here to help us grow in the future and replace these jobs that we need. Keeping kids who are already here, educating them so they can take those jobs. A lot of the kids that we are educating are not being successful right now. Low-income minority populations, and those folks, those kids, their success rate, their education gap has to be closed. So a community like this has to help close that gap. We have to help kids learn to read. The school district and the teachers can't do it all. The community has to take up some part of that. And the other thing is, you have to start looking out for your neighbor. There's going to be a lot more people that need assistance to stay in their homes who are elderly, and that's going to be a big issue in the future. A way of distributing services that's kind of like Meals on Wheels is right now, but for a lot of other things, in my opinion. Just so that we can't create a whole new system. We have people that already live here. It's volunteerism, it's getting people together, it's talking, finding out what the issue is, how can we make that better, and people getting out of the way so it can get better. You know? Stand back, we're going to make this work better than it is right now. So that's my thought.
Thank you. Just out of curiosity, show of hands, anybody here who was actually born in Rochester and still lives here? Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay. I guess that means the rest of you came here from somewhere else. Okay, how about everybody here who actually lives in the city of Rochester? Show of hands. Okay, anybody who doesn't live in the city of Rochester? What drove you away?
I want the country.
Okay, well, thank you, Savita, and thank you, Jeff, for your discussions. I'd like to open up to audience questions. Just a note, you can either raise your hand and I will recognize you and you can take your turn, just speak loudly. The other thing is that we have, if you're kind of shy, and I know some of you are, I'm one of you, if you're kind of shy and you don't want to raise your hand, you want to write your question out, there are index cards at each table. You can just hold your index card up and Randy will come and get it and we can read your question. Okay, in the back, in the green.
I was wondering what plans they have for building more lower priced housing for the people who are coming. A lot of them are coming with, you know, they're working in hotels and stuff, but they can't find a house.
Well, the programs that Rochester historically has had and been involved with to assist in low and moderate income housing are almost non-existent. We don't do anything locally to assist that program at all, other than helping finance private developers who have the concept to do it. Most of the assisted housing comes through the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency, which is a state agency, and they help developers build new housing that's affordable. It's subsidized because it's brand new. It's subsidized with cheap money being offered by the state to the developers so that they can turn that back to the program. More or less, it costs them less to borrow the money to build it. They can charge less in the rents. There is a housing plan that was just done by Olmsted County. It was the lead agency, the Rochester Area Foundation, and they hired a consulting firm to look at the housing needs for the whole county. And that issue is number one priority for a lot of folks in the county. You're going to see a lot more about that in the future. Because there's a need to build about 256 units of affordable housing every year from now for the next 30 years to maintain the estimated need. And it doesn't happen like that. But there are a couple of buildings being built right now in town. There's the senior housing out by Eastwood Golf Course. That's affordable senior housing. That's under a program. There are a couple of workforce housing programs. Workforce housing is really what the state subsidizes. People still have to have a good job, good enough job to pay a very reasonable rent. It's not for people who don't have really bad jobs or are unemployed that live in these places. It's for people who already have jobs and can't afford to live here. The system is not very well geared towards housing the very, very poor. Nobody builds that. There's no money in building that, really. The government would have to do that. We have a few of those. The Francis Hotel downtown was a project that the Housing Redevelopment Authority does. And so it's really kind of government programs built for the very, very low.
Barb?
piggybacking off that, we do have a whole population of working poor who have jobs that work in service industry jobs that Mayo requires these service industry jobs because they work downtown. But yet these individuals can't afford to live in town, but they can't afford to commute into town because they can't afford the bus passes, they can't afford the gas for the car. And rents in this town are incredibly high. Is there anything that we are willing as a community or DMC is going to look at instead of building more low-income housing, which personally, as having been very low income at one time, I don't want to go into a dorm-like environment again. I want to be able to have a home, a small home. I want to live in a community with my neighbors. How are we going to help these people get into homes or nice apartments? The apartments downtown are beautiful, but they're $1,500 a month rent. And how are we going to help the community afford to have our service industry workers live here and grow the community?
Right, that's the major economic issue with the growth of what amounts to be, we're like Disneyland here, more or less. We create really good jobs at one end, but a lot of jobs that need service level jobs which don't pay. Either the wages have to go up in those jobs because there's not enough people to fill them and the market will say those wages go up, but your desires are all the desires of everybody, but no one has a very, very good answer on how to accomplish that. I think there's going to be, my personal opinion is that we are going to have to look to ways to find people to get into some of our older homes and maintain those in a program so that they're affordable and continue to be affordable. Because Rochester has a large housing stock of really affordable, small, single-family homes that are only getting older and older and older. And there's going to have to be money spent on that. As I mentioned, we don't do much of that now in our community. We won't tax ourselves to do that. We have a community development block grant program where money comes from the federal government, and we assist low and moderate income families to stay in their homes by just fixing up the roof and the water heater and stuff like that. But 20 houses a year, and Rochester has 47,000 houses. So it's a real issue, and that's one of the dramatic issues. Again, it's not unique to Rochester, but again, the point that everybody talks about how many more houses are going to be built downtown, and they really are for the people who work and walk to downtown, but they're not the people who don't get paid well in the jobs downtown. You can't afford it. The market, the way it's structured right now, cost of land and everything else, is way too expensive to build low-income housing downtown if you're not subsidizing the market. There will be some money that maybe will come through the DMC to assist a development that comes forward with a project like that. It'll be another form of, because there is some private infrastructure money available through the DMC. So, meaning you could ask the DMC as a developer, if you're going to build a low-income project, can you assist me with acquiring this property or knocking down the building that's there so I can build this new building that will be affordable? I don't know if that's really going to happen much, but it's another tool that will be there. Transit improvements are the biggest thing that I think the government will be involved in. Finding a way to make the transit system better, run longer during the day, run at night, run at daytime, because a lot of these jobs, these people who have these jobs are hardworking people who work two jobs, and they might be on different sides of the town, and that's the crazy thing. The people who have these jobs are the people who need a car more than anybody, but they can't afford to have a car, so what can you do as a government? You can help them by taking a portion of that cost of living, which is given to transportation, and coming up with a better transit system. But that requires the desire to do that. It costs some money, but it's really the first thing I think that will happen that you'll see is the transit systems. Because there's some money that comes out of the DMC specifically for transit. So transit improvements over the next 5 to 10 years are going to be huge. Much bigger changes than have been in the past.
I have a question that was given to me. How many languages are spoken in Rochester, and how can faith communities respond to those who speak languages other than English?
As I know of today, 67 languages are spoken in Rochester School District alone. But as a community, I don't know how much it could be much more. So, I'm sorry, what's the second part of your question?
How can faith communities respond to others who don't speak English?
This question comes quite often, how do I communicate with people who do not speak English? or I really want to help them, I really want to work with them, but language barriers are there. So there are ways you can address it. There are 2 organizations who have interpreters. Maybe interpreter is one way. But to me personally, if you look at communication piece, words are only 7% of your communication. Rest is, everything else comes from your own reaching out. First step will be going through an interpreter, like IMAA has interpreter services. And also there is I don't know if you have any bilinguals, multilinguals in your own here. If not, that's first step. Second way is to reach out through school district EL department. They would be happy to help if you want to reach out to them. Once you get to know people, then how do you really integrate them? That's where inclusive part comes into the picture actually. Like, you know, a lot of people say we want to make our organization diverse, but that's where I always say, okay, once you are there, how do you know? What are the next steps you're doing to truly make them feel included and being a part of your whole purpose? So I hope it answers the questions though. And there are many language programs here too if you want to learn a second language. I wouldn't say that, but a community ed is offering tons of languages also. That's another way.
Jeff, did you want to take a stab at that?
Well, only the growth in it from 2000, there were a little less than 400 Spanish-speaking students in the school district. In 2013, there were 1,003. So 600, growth of 600. Somali language was about 500, now that's 1,000. So they doubled. Spanish is growing faster. Cambodian language actually, there are now fewer Cambodian speakers than there were in 2000, so that language is going down. Spanish and Somali would be big languages.
And to add to that, you know, there's Hawthorne where, so these are some of the components in our community available, also for helping out, reaching out to the people who speak different languages. And yeah, that's what we do. And there's a heritage language schools that goes on at the Hawthorne also. So there are many ways. I don't know if you're trying to reach out for your services, is that, what's the ultimate goal you're trying to reach out to people who are speaking diverse different languages?
I'm interested not just in service, but just in doing things together with people of different backgrounds, where you can see we're not very well integrated. We have some, but.
So how do you do your reach out, if I may ask? How do you do your reach out? At present.
Interfaith hospitality with housing, with homeless families.
Okay.
We have a brochure talking about our different service efforts, and I'm the first one to say I'm not familiar with everything in the brochure. But we have quite a few different ways that we reach out in the community. I can't think of any that are targeted necessarily at people who speak other languages, other than maybe our IHN that might capture some of that.
We used to host Migrant Head Start as well, but then they moved to the place, and I think now we're kind of open and maybe searching for a way to reach out.
And wherever you're going to reach out, I'm sure you will find somebody who speaks both languages. That can become your medium also. Once people get to know you, then it's language, like I said, it's just 7% is words. Everything else is your body language. That speaks much more, and people open up to that, in my experience, quickly. So maybe initial steps are going through somebody who does not have that barrier. Like I can speak 3 languages, so there are many people in every community that I know of who can speak English very well and also know their language also. So maybe reaching out to them as a medium first will be a good step to go for. Otherwise, there are interpreters available also.
Okay, thank you. At the red shirt table.
There has been an estimate of a huge number of jobs coming as a result of the destination medical community, something like 10,000 jobs in the next 10 years. My question is, what is the expected distribution of the salary levels of those jobs? You hear things like there's going to be a lot of high-tech jobs. You hear things that there's going to be a lot of low-paying jobs because they just need construction workers. So my question is, what is the expected distribution of the salaries of all those jobs that are coming in?
Well, from the the DMC made a job impact packet for the legislature to sell the concept of the legislation to the state of Minnesota. That's the only specific information I have available right now, and that had ranges. Remember, the DMC doesn't promise one job. It's not like the other ones where most economic development programs, the company comes to town and says, I promise to build something and we'll have 50 jobs and they'll all pay this, and will you help as a government make me build this building or whatever help I need. DMC doesn't promise any jobs. They promise square footage of building. And that square footage of building is their key. They say, if we build this square footage of building, the state will return money at a certain rate based on the square footage and cost of building that we build. But they wanted to get the issue of jobs in front of the legislature, so they made an estimate of what they thought these buildings would house. They said they had a range of between 911 and 1,041 physicians. And this was over their entire forecast for a 20-year period, not just 10 years. Allied health professionals between 12,226 and 13,973, and other big jobs at 863 to 986. They looked at what caught a lot of people's attention, and they were very forward on this, was that in the restaurant and retail industry and the commercial and professional industry, hotel and hospitality, they also made projections that they need about 1,500 to 2,500 restaurant and retail employees, 1,000 to 1,500 hospital, hotel, janitor type jobs. And those jobs ranged in wages from $18,000 to $25,000 a year for the restaurant workers and the hospitality workers. So those aren't very good paying jobs. Those are jobs that you'd probably have to have a better job than that, or at least two jobs to qualify for an apartment in the new assisted apartments where you have to pay a good share of your rent. And then they suggested in the other type of job, the construction-related, between 1,800 and 2,200 jobs. Construction-related industry took a big hit during the recent Great Recession from 2007 to 2011. So there's probably underemployed people in that group already that can fill some of these. But yeah, there's a big number of folks that are not in high-paying jobs.
Quick question. Go ahead. Is it fast?
In the last week, I've had a couple of conversations. One was with a Mayo executive who was complaining about the difficulty that they're currently having in hiring enough nurses and lab people and that sort of thing. And yet, I guess what I'm wondering is, what are the long-term plans of the various educational institutions that we have here in Rochester for expansion? We've heard about the University of Minnesota expanding, which is great, and some of the other schools, but I was wondering if you could kind of fill us in with the details on some of that.
I don't have a lot of details specifically on that. That might be one of the topics we want to address in one of these upcoming meetings. But I know the school district, the local school district has I'm only familiar as an outsider reading about it, the programs that they have that are for basically pre-nursing programs that are happening in the high school level. I think that's dramatic. You can graduate from high school and basically start a job as whatever a beginning nurse type job with your education already done. That's a lot more of that stuff has to be done. I mean, Everything has to be done. That's why my big point takeaway was helping the education system, because all the kids who fail in the education system are people that we really need not to fail at all. We can't have any failures because we don't have enough to begin with. And those folks have to be assisted along so that they can take these jobs and take more training. The other issues associated with RCTC and the other programs, they're all looking at this issue because, again, it's a national issue. It's not just Rochester. It's trying to fill these jobs with qualified candidates all over. So it's a big deal. Rochester, the University of Minnesota, our program for UMR in town here, I mean, their growth projections are about 500 students right now. Their big end is 1,500. I mean, they have no plans to be a gigantic entity in our community or in the system as a whole. But they all would be focused in the healthcare industry. All their degrees are in those kind of industries, so it certainly grows that portion. But they're not going to be a big player in Rochester because the university system doesn't have the money to expand, I think, is really the program. They go back every year. They're just going back now to try and, they don't have money or commitment funding from the university system to build the buildings that they want to build. They're still waiting in line for that right now, so that's not even going to go. It's projected.
The other conversation that I had was with some parents whose children wanted to get into nursing, and they found that they couldn't get into any of the nursing programs here, that there wasn't room. And they've had to actually leave the state in order to get into nursing programs.
Yeah.
And yet, Mayo used to have a nursing program, but they've closed that.
Yeah, I had friends when I went to college. When I went to college, I remember I had girls from my class that came here
Yeah, my mom was
become
very
nurses
into that nursing program.
in 1972. So I don't know when it stopped.
And I'm going to touch a little bit on that. You know, I'm also part of Minnesota State University. I'm doing a program there. But if you see the biggest problem in the next 10 years, we're talking about hunger and poverty now. Education is in that same level of crisis going to happen if you don't address it right now. It's so severe. In Rochester itself, you can imagine the achievement gap. We have the highest students earning ACT and SAT on one spectrum, and then on the other spectrum we have the highest achievement gap in our schools today. And I was just listening to the radio the other day. Every 1 minute, one high school kid drops out of high school. That's a national figure. So imagine, in 1 year, 3.5 million students drop out of high school, whatever reason, and they're not from just ethnic and diverse backgrounds. They're from all over US. So those are the drastic things happening as a community. If we don't pay attention to education, we will not only have these other problems, we'll have systemic problems of students who are not equipped to really earn their own living and become liability on the society as a whole. So what are we doing about that? And that's why when I'm talking about diversity council, it's biggest thing that plays role is our own biases, and we want to say competing with our own, like this is doing better than other, but if all of us don't do better in the long run, it's going to be really not a good picture for our whole community. And that's where our role is. What do we do to address it today so it doesn't become our big issue 10 years? Even now, means right now, 30% population in Rochester School District is from ethnic minority backgrounds. It's 28 to 30%, which is going to go even more and more. And imagine if all our resources are going to address, if we don't empower those students to learn from now kindergarten, preschool onwards, by 3rd grade, if they have not learned English, they are going to drop out in 10th grade. That's the statistics, that's the research that has been going on. So every kid has to learn how to read by 3rd grade, otherwise they are a potential for 10th grade dropout. And that's where the proactiveness is going out in education today. Like, how do we make kids to be empowered, every kid, not just few, to be at that stage. So as a community, maybe, I don't know, this is a very big step here that you're doing proactively, looking at the needs of the community and also trying to drive your mission and goals with it. I'm like, it's phenomenal. I mean, just start thinking about, deeper thinking on not giving somebody a fish, but how to teach them how to fish. That is the solution for many problems that I see working in all diverse minority and with everybody, not just. So when we talk about diversity, we talk about only ethnicity and race. I really want to see diversity in all sense. Like I work with workforces, and going back to another question, he mentioned about first time in US history, 4 generations are working in the workforce, which has never happened before. People are working longer, and students who are coming are not equipped to take the jobs yet. So there is a huge, drastic things happening if we don't address it as a community member today.
Thank you. I think we should thank our speakers today. Lauren, did you want to say something about our upcoming survey?
Well, the survey is up, it's open, the address is in the bulletin as well, but add a www to it. So Vikings aren't on, so take it online today.